Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. I'm your host, Patsun, and today we're gonna be taking a look at r/relationship advice, where OP's ex is upset that he's engaged to another woman. Let's begin. My fiance's older sister confessed that she felt rejected by me and I'm the reason her life is a mess. Posted by Reddit user Marino Scopi.
This might not seem like a big deal to most people reading, but it's become a big deal for me and my fiancé. So when I was 14, I became best friends with a girl, let's call her G. When we were 16, we started dating. Spent all our time together. Basic teenage love stuff. During this time, I became close with her little sister V, who was 13. V and I were always friendly with one another, some teasing, some fighting, but just general kids being kids. So G and I dated for 4 years and ended up breaking up when we were in college because we wanted different things in life. I was fine with having only G as my partner for life, and G felt like she'd be missing out on her girls just want to have fun days. This was obviously a pretty rough time for me, for G, and for her whole friend group. The relationship was basically a corpse for several months, dragged along by our unwillingness to let each other go. She proposed an open relationship several times, and I just couldn't bring myself to agree to it. During this time, V got pretty angry with her sister G because V, by that point, saw me as part of the family. I found out later that V and G got into regular fights about G's inability to commit to me. At the time, V was 17 years old and G was 20, so it's not like V could really force G to do anything. Eventually, G and I broke up, and our 4-year relationship and 6-year friendship came to an end. I felt that the right thing to do was probably distance myself from V as well, because being as close to V as I usually was would mean that I'd never quite leave G's life. This ended up backfiring because it made V very upset, and she basically interpreted this to mean that V and I were never really friends, and I was only tolerating her for G's sake. Out of guilt, or out of some selfish desire to not lose yet another piece of my life, I acquiesced to V, and we stayed friends. This was in 2014. By 2015, V was 18 and I was 21. She came to the same college as I was in, and we were good friends. I always kept some distance with V out of respect to G. This means that no matter how friendly I was with V, I never really talked to her about really personal stuff or my romantic life. She was a good friend, but not a close friend. Then in late 2015 there was an incident where V behaved extremely jealous towards a girl I was casually seeing. There was another incident in early 2016 where V was found to be shit-talking a different girl I was seeing. And when I confronted V about it, V basically confesses that she has developed feelings for me. I shut that down immediately because every part of it felt totally and viscerally wrong. But at the time, V assured me that G was okay with it and her mom was okay with it too. She puts all her cards on the table and says that, while she understands I view her as a kid, she'd like the chance to at least date me and change my mind. Obviously she succeeded, because as of February this year, she and I are engaged. We've been together for 5 years now, and it's by far the best relationship I've ever been in. The only problem is that it turns out V lied about one thing at the start of the relationship. While it's true that her mother loved me and was totally fine with V dating me, G was never ever okay with it. In fact, G was very much not okay with it and had been vocal about this to V. G never said any of this to me because she and I were no contact. All of this is coming up now, in 2020, because G is over our apartment for the week, and on day 2, yesterday, she gets drunk and blurts out how I upgraded to a younger, prettier model by dating her little sister. V was already passed out by this point, so she has no idea that G said these things to me. But at the time, I got defensive and said that G was okay with it at the time, so why does it bother her so much half a decade later? Then G told me the truth about how she was never okay with it. But then she found out that I agreed to give V a chance, and it broke her heart, and she tried to let go of the jealousy she was feeling. And now, 5 years later, she still feels intense pangs of jealousy, all made worse by the wedding planning for our 2021 marriage. G says that she regrets asking me for a breakup and the single life wasn't worth losing love for. She assured me that she wasn't trying to break V and myself up or trying to get me back. She said that she just needed me to know how she really feels. She also attributes these feelings of rejection and loss as the cause of her depression, which incidentally has derailed her life for the last 4 years, so the times match up, I guess. What's the right move here? Do I tell V about G's confession? Do I pretend like I didn't hear any of this?
Well, OP did date both sisters, so of course there will be some sort of drama. But honestly, it sounds like the younger sister was probably in love with OP from the very beginning, considering how upset she got with her sister for disrespecting OP by not committing, and when he tried to distance himself from her after the breakup. She also probably went to the same college as OP to stay in his life. I think it's a little bit naive of OP to take the little sister's assurance that his ex was fine with them dating at face value. But there's nothing OP can do about that now. OP should definitely discuss his conversation with his ex to his fiance. I would expect she has been waiting for this shoe to drop for a good while now. OP should also set clear boundaries for both sisters going forward because I'm sure there's so much more drama ahead of him. But it will be difficult to form a reasonable opinion without hearing OP's update first. So let's do that, shall we?
Before I posted the last thread, I was going to just let this whole thing die off and never speak to V about it. But the majority of you felt it was best to at least be honest to V, and at some point, you all convinced me. So yesterday morning I sat V down and told her what had happened. G was away at this point, so I had the privacy for a real conversation. A lot of people in the last post really mistook what kind of person V is, in my opinion. V isn't some kind of evil mastermind that was playing me, her mother, her sister, and everyone else like puppets dancing on her strings. When I met her, she was an earnest kid. And she grew to be an honest but determined teenager at the time that we started dating. I mention this so that people understand that this conversation wasn't an interrogation. I just wanted to know what she thought about what G said. As it turns out, the truth is always somewhere in between, and I've learned a lot of new information. I just let her speak and get everything off her chest. I didn't interrupt to ask for clarification or interject to argue at any point. The way I'm going to write this down is probably annoying to read, but it's the way I process them. 1. New, V's been in love with me for longer than I thought. G and I were planning on taking her to the carnival in town on her 14th birthday, along with her group of friends. But G got sick, and V was starting to get sick, so they figured the whole plan was cancelled. I don't remember much of this event, but she remembers that I cheered her up and convinced her to go to the carnival. So, it was me, V and V's friends. And when V would get tired or need to sit down and rehydrate, I'd sit with her. She remembers that one of her friends was flirting with me and at one point gave me a compliment and I redirected the compliment to V and it made V feel like $1,000,000. Says this was the night she fell in love. 2. Confirmed, G suspected V. Number 1. I used to shower at G's house once in a while, especially during summer vacation. This only used to happen after pickup games if G wanted to hang out afterwards. I'd leave dirty laundry here for G to throw into the wash. Turns out V started helping her later on, and G noticed that V only helped her when my dirty clothes were in the hamper, never on a normal day. 3. Confirmed, G suspected V. Number 2. Senior year of high school I took art history. I didn't give a shit about the class, but V was super interested in hearing from me about it. Turns out G caught V researching my class topics several times so that V could hold conversations with me. 4. Confirmed, G suspected V. Number 3. G knew that V would put on makeup and tidy herself up every time I came to visit G. Even if I'm just picking G up to take G out, V would come downstairs with makeup on to chat with me for a bit before I left. I didn't mention to V that I didn't notice at all. 5. Messy, G opposed V's feelings, then came around. So, V told G earnestly about her feelings for me before she even told her mom. This was 6 months after G's and my relationship ended. G got pretty heated at this, and a week after V told G, there was an incident between the sisters where G basically chewed V out. G then told V that I'd never fall for V. This was when V basically called out G and said that G wouldn't ever be happy for me. In this conversation, G explicitly said that if, by some miracle, I said yes to V, then G would be put her tail between her legs and admit she was wrong. G later, 1 month-ish, apologized about how she spoke to V and said that if V truly loved me, she was happy for V. 6. Messy, G encouraged V to confess to me. The next big episode regarding me came the month that V confessed to me. V and I were in a bit of a fight because I didn't like how she had behaved to a girl I was friends with benefits with. V was crying at home, and G basically encouraged V to rip the band-aid off and tell me how she feels. This way, if I rejected V, V can at least move on. V asked G if that's really okay, and G said yes. 7. Messy. G was happy and scared when V was about to confess. In a conversation the evening that V was going to tell me her feelings, V and G spoke again over the phone. V remembers that G made a very iffy joke that suggested that G was hurting. V paused the convo and asked G if G really was okay with this. G backpedaled and insisted it was just a joke and said she was excited for her little sis. V remembers the joke comment being something like, "Good luck getting the love of my life." So that's it. The truth is more complicated, I guess. Turns out that V had feelings for me a long time ago. Things like falling in love with me for taking her to a carnival on her birthday seem dramatic and immature in retrospect, but it's important bits that make up a bigger truth. Also turns out that G had small nagging suspicions over the years. But most important is that it turns out, when I was single and V was working up courage to make a move, G wasn't actually in opposition. G ended up being a good sister and encouraging V to chase what she wants. What further complicates things is that G used to express some insecurity around her body and how much more beautiful V was back during the last 2 years of us dating. I dismissed these insecurities and I used to laugh them off because at the time G was 18 and V was 15. How does an 18-year-old even compare herself to a 15-year-old? I didn't know that there was this underlying sentiment of competition over the years. To spend years feeling jealous of your little sister must have been torture. This was the least dramatic way I could think to resolve this. Since G, either deceitfully or genuinely, doesn't remember any of her confessions to me, I'm going to let sleeping dogs lie, I think. V is perfect, and I wish I could go back in time and take away the heartache she must have felt over the years as some insecure kid not knowing if I'd ever love her or not. I'm posting this update partly to organize my thoughts, but also in case anyone feels strongly that I should talk to G. I believe letting this rest and not poking it anymore is the best option. Agree? Disagree?
It's super messy that you dated a pair of sisters and now marrying one. Someone you used to be in love with and had sex with will be your sister-in-law. That's just fucked up. Look, come on, it's your life, OP, and you've chosen this path. It will always be a little messy with your ex/future sister-in-law to some degree. So I guess it's probably best that you ignore and at the same time acknowledge the fact that you had a romantic past. It's going to suck for her to be standing next to her sister at your wedding when she still has feelings for you. Well, it's kinda her fault for choosing the single lady life and thinking she might be missing out on Chad. She has to live with the consequences. She can't blame anyone else but herself. Now she's saying her life is a mess, low-key blaming you, and tried to make a gouge in your relationship with your fiancé. Honestly, that's just pathetic. I hope the extra dicks was worth it. Just like how it will be worth it if you consider donating to me, your host PattSun. Viewer support is the best way for me to remain independent and continue bringing you these daily videos, which will always be here on my YouTube channel for you to watch absolutely free. So consider clicking that super thanks just below the video title, or you can use my PayPal in the description box down below. Thanks for listening, everyone. If you even somewhat enjoyed today's story, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and if you really like it, make sure to subscribe to PattSun to never miss a future upload. Stay strong.